Bless Square Enix's heart, they're giving Balan Wonderworld more marketing than Nier Replicant. And yes, it's Wonder World, not Wonderland, a mistake I'm bound to make at least once during this video, and because I mention it now, that absolves me of any responsibility for when I eventually get it wrong. Now, there's plenty of reasons why Balan should turn some heads. Not only is it a 3D platformer with a very unique aesthetic, coming out in a time where 3D platformers are in a sort of renaissance, but it's also a new collaboration between Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima. In case you're unaware, both of them worked on various Sonic Team properties in the 90s, the most prominent being various Sonic games, obviously, and the Sega Saturn cult classic Nights into Dreams, of which Balan is looking to share a lot of DNA with. Now that's all well and good, but Balan just had a demo released and, well, it's a strange case. I'd get right into sharing some impressions with it, but I need to right a wrong first. See, despite my intense love for various Sega properties that's taken off in the past couple of years, I haven't actually played Nights. I'm not unfamiliar with the character, I've seen them in Sonic Adventure and Sonic Riders. I own the sequel, Journey of Dreams, but I haven't actually played it yet. What can I say, it was $3 at GameStop. And I own not one, but 2 copies of the original on Steam and Xbox. So while I could have just jumped right into talking about the Balan demo right after finishing it, I want to talk a bit about the original Nights first. Not only do I think it can provide a unique perspective on the Balan demo, as now I've played it both with and without the original Nights as reference, but I think it'll provide a bit of insight into what people are comparing Balan to, and explain the reception of the demo a little bit better. So starting off with Nights' plot, and stick with me on this, the story follows 2 children, Claris and Elliot. Both are struggling with failures in the real world, with Elliot being unable to keep up with a competing team's basketball skills, and Claris suffering stage fright during an audition. Both suffer nightmares that night about these events, but eventually enter the dream world of Nightopia. There they meet an androgynous jester named Nights. They explain that the ruler of the nightmare world, Wiseman, is stealing the dream energy known as Idia in order to take over Nightopia and eventually the real world, thus kicking off the Journey of Dreams, to stop him. Nights' story isn't terribly complex on the surface, but the way that it's told and the underlying layers is what makes it interesting. Most of what I just described isn't mentioned in the game itself, as starting up either character's story only gives you the nightmare cutscene, and even then there's no spoken dialogue. Despite all this, Nights manages to tell a very human story. All that stuff about Wiseman and the dream world and all that, it's really only there to justify the video game parts of this video game. Ultimately, it's a coming-of-age story for these 2 kids, of them overcoming their anxieties, reclaiming their confidence, taking hold of their hopes and dreams, and finding the courage to make them come true. There are people who are far more qualified to talk about this sort of stuff than I am. I recommend Digi Valentine's video, it's pretty good. But Nights manages to do a lot with very little. On the gameplay front, Nights is, well, pretty unorthodox. Okay, here's how it works. When you start a stage, nightmares steal your Idia, and you need to get it back. By combining with Nights, you can begin flying around the stage. Each stage is split into 4 laps, with each one looping around until it's completed. You need to fly around and collect 20 of these chips, and then fly into the cage with the Idia. Once you do, you head back to the starting point and you advance to the next lap. Do this 4 times and you move on to a boss. Defeat them and you beat the stage, with the game tallying up your score and giving you a letter grade based on your performance. All Nights can do is fly, dash, and perform a paraloop, which occurs when flying in a circle, capturing anything in the middle. Laying it all out like this makes it seem kinda simple, but much like the story, there's a lot going on under the hood. In order to reach the final stage with each character, you need to obtain an overall grade of C or higher in each stage, a task which isn't terribly demanding, but requires a bit more legwork than just simply flying. This may be a game by Sonic Team, but while speed is certainly a factor, getting to the end of a lap as quickly as possible isn't how you're gonna get high scores. Once you get the Idia back, you enter bonus time, where all of your points are doubled. By flying over the starting gate, you can loop around the lap again, with all the bonus chips and rings respawning as well. Thus, the way to get high scores is to loop around as quickly as possible, getting as many collectibles along the way. Of course, you have the time limit to account for as well. Each lap gives you 2 minutes to get the job done, and while running out isn't a game over, it will cost you all of your bonus points and pretty much guarantee an F rank. So Nights is a game that requires speed, decent routing, and most importantly, an understanding of your own limits. The best runs of the stage are the ones that come down right to the wire, so you need to consider all the factors. Can I quickly paraloop these collectibles? Do I have enough dash to keep a good chain up? Do I have enough time to pull up another lap, or should I cash out now? All of these questions need to be considered, and performing good runs becomes easier and easier as you grow more accustomed to Nights' movement and the gimmicks of each stage, and man, is it satisfying to pull off a clean A rank run. The only sour spot I have, besides the canyon, I hate this place, are the bosses. Each fight gives you the same 2-minute time limit the normal stages give you. NiGHTS doesn't have a health meter, rather taking damage shaves 5 seconds off of your time, and unlike the regular stages, if you run out of time here, it is a game over, meaning you have to replay the entire stage for another shot if you screw up. And I don't know, some of these bosses are just kinda janky? Claus and his fireworks got me good the first time. Gilwing doesn't have a clear indicator of when his invincibility is over, and while the fight with Reala is cool, it can either be really easy or really hard. These are important to your score as well, as the faster you defeat them, the higher score multiplier you get, and that can be the difference between a good or a bad rank. And I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty annoying losing a great all-A run to a boss fight that just doesn't feel all that consistent. Now, NiGHTS isn't a very long game, as there's only 8 stages, and clearing the entire game only took me about an hour and a half, but it's incredibly replayable, and man, it's just plain fun. Off camera, I went back and got all the A ranks for the final achievement, and it was an absolute blast, helped by its boppin' soundtrack. Heck, I even did Christmas nights, even though it was January when I recorded the footage. For $8 on Steam and $10 everywhere else for the HD re-release, I'd say NiGHTS is a worthwhile purchase, and I can definitely see why it's considered such a classic. It also has me ready to be disappointed by Journey of Dreams, but that's going to be a future me problem. So that brings us to Balan Wonderworld, a game released 25 years later on systems far more powerful than the Saturn. Okay, so Emma and Leo are certainly good stand-ins for Claris and Elliot, and I feel like the overall story invokes similar vibes to NiGHTS. They're both clearly troubled, and through their time in the Wonderworld, they'll be able to reclaim their hearts and become stronger as people. Or at least that's what I'm assuming. The game's apparently going to have 12 chapters, with each one focusing on repairing the hearts of a different individual. And while that may make the story a little bit less character-focused, the people in question are also just as troubled as the protagonists. So fixing their hearts still works in invoking the themes without feeling like it's artificially padding out the game to justify a $60 price tag, which is something I can appreciate. Presentation-wise too, Balan feels very much like NiGHTS. Dreams may not be exclusively the focus anymore, but the worlds and environments are no less imaginative and pretty, depending on the system. I got the bulk of the footage from the Series S because it turns out the next generation systems actually do exist, but my first playthrough of the demo was on the Switch, and oof. It's not unplayable, but it's not exactly ideal either, and whoa, the hell was that? Oh jeez, come on Balan, quit it, you're freaking me out. On Series S though, it's very smooth and very pretty to look at, and I imagine that holds true for the PlayStation 5 and PC as well, though I can't speak for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. You know what looks good regardless of the system though? Those CG cutscenes, oh my goodness. The colors are so vibrant and it's so bouncy, full of life and energy, I love it. And the soundtrack too. I can't say I'm too familiar with Ryo Yamazaki's previous works as a composer, but damn if this isn't a fantastic score, especially Balan's Bout, it's so good. The gameplay is where the differences start to show. This isn't a flight game, heck you aren't even playing as Balan most of the time. This is a 3D platformer, and that's not inherently a bad thing. The structure's simple enough, you get to the end of the stage, you complete 2 acts, and then you fight a boss, you watch your dance routines, and oh my god. Jeez dude, why are you a farmer when you can schmoove like that? Anyways, the progression is very Sonic-like, which I think works fine enough. To get to new chapters, you need a certain amount of these Balan statues that are peppered through each stage, which you can obtain using costumes. Without a costume, all you'll be able to do is jump, but by equipping costumes of the stage's inhabitants, you gain new powers that'll help you with platforming, puzzle solving, and combat. You can hold up to 3 costumes at once, and you can switch between them with the bumpers. However, there's a lot of problems to lay out. Now, to the game's credit, not every statue has a specific solution, it's just a matter of touching it. So you can bend the rules for some of these, which is a method of puzzle solving that I enjoy. However, some require combinations of costumes, and I can only assume this will get more ambitious in the full game. Again, you only can have 3 costumes on hand at once, so if you find out you don't have the right costumes with you, you gotta track down a checkpoint so you can change what you have. This doesn't even account for when you get hit. You don't have a health bar, rather when you take damage, you lose the equipped costume, which presents a new problem. If you don't have any extras in your wardrobe, a process which is tedious in its own right, you have to go get new ones from the source level. You can use any costume in any level, but they only naturally spawn in certain chapters, So say you need a Chapter 4 costume for a Chapter 6 puzzle, but you get hit on the way. Now you gotta hike back to Chapter 4 so you can grab another one so that you can solve the puzzle, which is pretty annoying. Not helping is how overly simple Balan Wonderworld is in its controls. NiGHTS wasn't exactly Steel Battalion levels of complex either, but for a 3D platformer in 2021, a single button control scheme feels off. The bumpers change your costume, and every other button, including the triggers, is an action button. I'm pretty sure this was done to accommodate the single Joy-Con in the Switch version, which itself probably helps serve the multiplayer that this game apparently has, but it introduces new problems. With only one action button, each costume can only have one action. This means that even the act of jumping, in a platformer, is tied to certain costumes. So even while exploring normally, you need to switch costumes constantly to get around, and while the dramatic spin while changing has flair, it starts to eat up time very quickly. This ain't no hat in time. Speaking of taking up time, the movement speed just feels a bit too slow. I get it, not every platformer needs to be Sonic fast, but you only have one speed, this brisk jog, and these levels are really big. It works fine enough for platforming, though I know your mileage will vary with that, but for exploring, and especially when you need to backtrack, you really start to wish for a run button. The crazy thing is though, is that despite all those problems, I still found myself really enjoying Balan's demo. I enjoyed it enough to play it twice at the very least. When I first played it on Switch, I played through the entire thing in one sitting, and I hadn't even noticed that 2 hours had passed by the time I was done. Maybe it was the aesthetic, or the music, or maybe the slow speed and the low-stake gameplay had something to do with it, but I find Balan Wonderworld to be a really comfy game, the kind that you can spend a few hours with after a long day at work and just sort of vibe with. Is that a weird way to describe it? I don't know, but there's certainly a place in the market for games like that. It'll certainly have its fans, and I'm probably going to be one of them, but it's got plenty of problems that's going to make this a tough sell for $60. I do think a delay might be in its best interest. There's some quirks inherent to the design for sure, but speeding things up a bit, and optimizing the Switch version, would do wonders for the game, pardon the pun. I just want Balan to succeed, because it's got charm in spades, and there's plenty of potential here. I'd recommend playing the demo and coming to your own conclusions, and hopefully in the future, we can reconvene and talk about a polished Balan Wonderworld that'll please everyone. Until that day comes, I hope you all find happiness in your own hearts. And you should play NiGHTS. Yeah, you should do that. It's really good.